Hi, this is John Solari, the Method Actor Speaks, and today, we talk about the work on this program, and we have a very special guest. When I was talking to her, I couldn't believe all the things she did in this business. And we have Sharon Benson, who's, I just want to say you're a singer, because you've done so much in the business. And I would really, I got a feeling we'll have a few shows on this, so hang in there with us, folks. Sharon Benson.
Hello.
Say hello. Now you're a California girl.
I am.
Okay.
I'm a California native.
A native.
Born and raised.
Was your family in the music business or in the entertainment business?
Well, actually, my father came to this country when he was a kid and came through Ellis Island, and he was a furrier by trade, but he actually was a multi-instrumentalist. He was a full kit drummer. He played piano, vibes. He played a little bit of harmonica, a little ukulele, guitar, marimbas, a lot of percussion stuff, conga drums, things of that nature, and did a little songwriting as well. My mom used to sing. My brother, who was 12 years older than me, he was sax, flute, clarinet. There was always music going on.
Really?
And they moved to California before I was born. And my father continued on his trade as a furrier. And he ended up getting into the business, doing a lot of furs for Paramount, Warner Brothers. He did The Great Race. He did MAME, he did Anti-MAME, he did The Hotel, he did many things with, Edith Head, the famous designer, used to come to our house and pick up things and drop things off, and I used to get to go to the sets with my dad and go to the wardrobe department, and I could have gone into wardrobe, but I didn't want to do that. I always wanted to act, and I always wanted to sing. I wanted to start taking singing lessons at 3 years old, and my mother's teacher, whose name was Maestro, said I was too young, and that so I didn't get to do that. I was always eager to act, to sing. There were musicals always on. My mother listened to opera, but she listened to musicals as well, and my father used to do a Charlie Chaplin act, and he was a comedian and a practical joker, and so there was always that sense of theater and music and the industry, which my heart was always there, but I was discouraged because I was told that it was a heartbreaking industry and that I should get a real job. So that took me on a long side track.
I was just thinking, when your father was a furrier, that was the time to be in the fur business. No one really, it was very chic. Oh, that must have been Edith Head. She's so famous.
Yeah.
And the exposure, you were around all the stars.
I was.
Back in those days. Do you remember some of them that you met?
Well, absolutely. Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., I loved meeting. Certainly when I got older, after doing my big medical career, and I won't go into that.
Later we'll go into that.
But I got, lucky, got into the film industry and got to work with a lot of wonderful people like Shelley Winters and Kurt Russell and Gary Busey and Dan Haggerty. It was a lot of fun. John Savage I worked with, and I even got to do, when I was first starting out, I got into the movie Carrie on a whole accidental thing, so being able to work with John Travolta and Sissy Spacek and Nancy Allen and on, and that was great. Yeah, well, Brian, I got to be one of his little repertory group in the movie Carrie because I was one of the girls in the shower. That's how I got myself into that movie. And it worked out really, it was wonderful. It got me out of the medical profession. I said I was never going to go back. Finally, I was ready to move ahead and started doing extra work and got to do a POV scene with De Niro for New York, off camera, like hanging out with De Niro, with Liza Minnelli getting her shot. So I enjoyed spending time with him and got to meet Jack Nicholson, who came and visited that set on New York, and that was fun. There's been so many people through the years, and then fast forward, of course, to.
Well, let's stay back.
Oh, stay back there.
I want to really. Now you say you got into acting, but did you study with anyone or anything?
I did study. I had some different workshops that I went through, but the ones that were most important to me were, I spent a bit of time with Lynette Gonzalez.
Milton Gonzalez.
Yeah, and then Joanne Linville, who started the Stella Adler workshop out here, and Joanne was, as far as acting goes, was one of the most incredible teachers I ever got to experience, and finding out that it was all about the word and where it lands, and that meant so much to me, not only as an actress but as a singer, as a performer. And in performance I had quite a few vocal coaches. Even working on some of my musical acts, I worked with a man named Arthur Joseph. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he sent me to Ellen Gear to do some live performance, Will Gear's daughter. And so I got to work with her as well, and I was picked out of a crowd of 350 people by Tom Laughlin when he was going to shoot Billy Jack Goes to Washington, so I got to be a lawyer on that. Unfortunately, it was one of those things that went straight to video, right. And it took a long time to even do that because he ran out of money many times during that. But I ended up getting, to do that work there and do some of Tom Laughlin's workshops as well. And
I want to get back to Joanne. I was with Joanne actually last week.
Really?
Yeah, because she's a member of the Actors
Studio.
Studio.
Yes, of course.
She had, I guess when you met her, she was still, I don't know if she was still married to Mark Rydell, because she was married to the director.
This was a bit later, yeah. It was a bit later, yeah.
And she was talking, I talked to you about how the breath, she was the one that was talking to me about that day.
I love her.
She really, she moderated some scenes I did at the Actors Studio. Yeah, she really is. She loves Stella. And if you listen to her voice and Stella's voice, I was watching, they sound almost identical in their voices.
Joanne is a powerhouse.
She really is. Loves the work.
Absolutely.
Loves the work. So you really got some good training there.
Yeah.
And you also telling me, because I want to get into, eventually I want to have some casting people on, how you got into casting.
Well, I'll tell you how that happened. I was almost blackballed from this non-union extra casting agency because the woman that owned this company called Talent Does Count, nobody ever saw her. She was an interesting character, and that's another story in another book. But her coordinator, it was on New York, because it was after Carrie. I had met some people on the set of Carrie, because I got to stay through that entire film, thanks to Brian De Palma. But they had to, SEG, made a deal, and they had to, bring in a certain amount of SEG and then non-union people. So there was a group of non-union people in that prom scene, and I met a guy who was coordinating for this non-union casting director. And since I didn't want to go back to the hospital where I was the head of nuclear medicine, I wanted to stay in the film industry. I started doing non-union extra work and met this guy, and he got me a job with this woman, but this woman was hesitant to even use me unless she needed a big cattle call. Her name was Edie Ramsey, and she didn't like it because I was one of the girls that took my clothes off in the shower scene, so she thought maybe I was one of those girls. So at any rate, long story short, little by little I began to talk to this woman on the phone, and we really started to connect. And I was working, she could see who the person I was inside, and we began to understand each other. And she needed a female coordinator to do the Triangle Factory Fires. It was with Tova Felchich and Tom Bosley. It was a TV movie. And she needed a female coordinator, so I got to end up being a coordinator for her. And I ended up also doing the Buddy Holly story.
What does a coordinator do?
The coordinator is the one on the set that, she gets all these extras to come to the set, and I appear on the set with the list of extras. I check everybody in, and make sure they're where they want to be, and the ADs are, telling me who they need and what they need and who they're going to want the next day, and I'd call her and let her know. And so I was always making sure they had the right extras and the right wardrobe, and
so
who they needed what days.
Another title would be like an AD.
Well, it was almost like an AD, but working right along with it. I was an extra casting coordinator.
Yeah, right.
That was something of that.
They have their own titles, but that's what it sounds like.
And like you said, background.
Background now they call it.
Background talent coordinator.
And they've never given the recognition. I was watching a show about casting, and it's one of the few that never has been nominated for Oscars. The casting.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone else gets an Oscar, but not casting. And what would you do without casting?
What would you do without the whole crew? There's so many departments that are important.
Does casting do that too? The rest of the crew?
No.
Oh.
Casting I was doing extra casting. I was specifically extras, and then a little bit later down the line, I even got to do some work after Edie Ramsey had passed away. I didn't really want to continue her company. I did that for quite a few years and did a lot of movies, Raging Bull, a lot of things that after central casting had a certain amount of union, the SEGs, they'd have to, for the big ones. But we also did some smaller films, TV things, features, and all of that. But I got into doing a little bit of casting for Cat People. Got to find a young Nastasia Kinski on Cat People, and I used to cast as non-union people. I could get my family, my parents, my friends, my relatives. I cast if they were the right type, and
needed the money.
And they needed the money, and my father certainly didn't need the money, but I ended up getting him onto the Triangle Factory Fires with Tom Bosley because, first of all, we're Sephardic Jews. I was born a Sephardic Jew, and my father, my parents spoke
Sephardic Jew. That's
Spanish Jew. It's a Spanish Jew.
Oh,
and so
okay.
From Spain, and so my parents spoke Spanish. Of course, they didn't really teach me and my brother because it was like they could talk behind our back in front of us, speaking Spanish. But they needed a Spanish-speaking person who could also be a seamstress or pattern maker. My father made fur coats. He made linings. He made everything. So he ended up getting some really good bit parts and shots in this thing, working with Tom Bosley and translating for the Latino people that were in the factory.
Wow.
That were, it was a true story.
Now that's an
So I got my dad
story.
into that, and he had to go to work, but he got stuck in this thing, and I said, Dad, you can't leave now because you're in the scene and you have to be He got a little pissed off, but that was okay. He did it.
Wow.
So that was fun.
And you were talking about those are the days when they paid cash.
Yep. Oh my God, that was crazy. That was scary. As a matter of fact, Edie Ramsey had a safety deposit box. We used to go to the bank. There was that one time where we literally had $25,000. We had a guy with us, a lawyer, that was like helping, but it was scary when the extras wanted to line up and get paid, and we were running into overtime, and we had to figure out a certain amount of money. It got hairy a couple times, but it was fun.
In those days, cash. God.
It was crazy.
I wish they would come back because you didn't have to claim it.
$30 a day, hey, and a box lunch.
And a box lunch. That's a lot of money. But this is in the 70s you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
$30 today, forget about it. You can't even.
I know.
Parking meters cost you that.
It's just about. I hate to say it, yeah.
You really. True. So from there, that really is interesting. And then where did you go from there?
Well, I ended up, because I wanted to work more, getting into a whole different thing. I ended up even joining SEG at one point and ended up as one of the OR nurses on St. Elsewhere for a very long time. And then I'd go back and work LA Law, just doing some things like that. Then I got into film production and became a production coordinator and started doing some things for sets and effects companies and doing some things, also working for a director on doing some of these crazy things. We did something that was kind of like a Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
I remember that show,
But it wasn't that. It was called Sports Styles, which never made it to TV. But there were, Christy McNichol was on it, Cheech Marin. It was a blast. We did all these things. We went to Maui for about 3.5 weeks and worked with stars and whatever the sports were that they wanted. That their passion was, Cheech was deep sea fishing, and I got seasick on the boat, and so did the host of the show. But we used to do a lot of things that were very exciting, helicopter rides and following. And there was another, I worked on Ronnie Howard's film, Grand Theft Auto, when that was his first film that he directed. His whole family was working it, his brother, his father, his mother, between craft service. I think his mom was in casting, his wife was in craft service, or vice versa. His dad was in the film, and his brother was working. So it was a blast, and that was out in Victorville. We did a lot of car things and explosions, and it was a lot of fun.
And being an actor then, and all that, you worked a little longer, the pay was better, and you got a lot more, and the insurance was cheaper.
Yeah.
The health insurance. Would you have to make like $1,500, $2,000?
Not much.
Yeah, and then you were covered full. I remember those days. God.
Yeah, I worked on a Roger Corman film too, which the Ronnie Howard Grand Theft Auto was a New World Pictures. But working on I Never Promised You a Rose Garden, got my card on that too, but my scene was cut out. But I was doing many things on that, and then got that part. And I think that's what I always wanted to work. As much as I wanted to act, I wanted to work in the industry too, and I could work more in production than I could as an actress on a steady basis. So I did a lot of production coordinating and things like that as well after the casting thing was up.
So you really did a lot of behind. Did you ever do any directing?
I did a little bit of AD work, but never directed anything completely. But I got to be an AD for
the audience. What does an AD do?
Assistant director is right alongside the director, making sure that the actors are ready, and that just down the line, making sure everyone's in makeup and on the set on time. And so
the director's the good guy and he's the bad guy.
Yeah, he's the police.
You got the good cop and the bad cop.
Yeah.
And he's the bad cop. That's a good way to put them.
But I enjoyed it. I did some grip work. I did wardrobe stuff. I did sets. I got to do a lot, certainly with the New World Pictures stuff back then. When it was non-union, some of the non-union stuff, we were able to go around and do many departments. So I got to do a lot of different things and learn a lot of different things. And
now today, you probably couldn't do half that stuff, especially in casting where it's gone out the window.
Yeah. It's different now.
I mean, casting it's turned into, we were talking about Marion Doherty, who really created casting, the real casting for talent, where today it's developed into now, it's corporations running and it's all about the money.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with talent. I mean, if you sold a sex tape and it sells a lot, you're a star, they want you.
Yeah.
They look at does this person make money in Europe? Yeah, that's what they look for today. It's sad, but what are you gonna do? We got into that. And now we can go into, now you had a business too.
I did. Well, I'll tell you how I ended up. I was working for a production company called Show Motion Design, and I was a project manager doing sets and effects for things like roller games, building roller derby things. It was a thing that they did the metals, because I had worked for a company doing sets and effects before that, but smaller type of things. They did big metalworks, gimbals, rooms that turn around, So the last film that I had my burnout on that got me out of the industry and into my business was Exorcist 3. And we had a lot of building a gimbal that it was the room that could turn around, that makes it look like that people are bouncing all over getting thrown all over the place in The Exorcist. And that was a really crazy job, burned me out. I won't go into what happened to Show Motion Design because it wasn't pretty, and things that went on and some of the bad boys of the industry at that time. But I enjoyed so much being a part of it, but it burned me out. I said, I'm done. I got to get out of here. And I took a breath and I took a rest, and I went off and did some other things. And along, and all during the time I think that like when I was on St. Elsewhere working at CBS Studio Center, there was a cute little coffee house at Laurel Canyon in Ventura that I used to go to every day, get my double, triple cappuccinos, and then go to set. And it was called the Kitchen Cupboard. And then there was, these people bought another place in Tarzana and called it Great Coffees, and I used to go there because I'm a coffee addict. I was drinking Turkish coffee as a baby because my parents used to have that after dinner. And that Great Coffees place got bought out by somebody else that really didn't know the coffee industry, but they bought this place. But we were going there, and I was walked in one day and said, God, I'd love to have a place like this, because I don't know if you were here when there used to be a Blah Blah Cafe. I don't know if you ever heard of that, of the Blah Blah Cafe, but originally it was on Tujunga and Ventura. It was right near Tujunga on Ventura, and then they went across the street to a bigger place, but Al Jarreau used to go in there, Joni Mitchell. I mean, it was like an after-hours musical kind of place. And years later, I thought, God, I'd love to have a place that could have been like the Blah Blah Cafe, but the coffee house. And walking into that coffee house just east of Tampa, that was then named Coffee Junction, after Great Coffees, these people wanted to get out of it. And I walked in at the right time and said, gee, I'd love a place like this. And they said, well, can you afford it? And my partner and I, we did it, we bought it, and made a musical venue out of it. I mean, it was not that at all. It was like a little coffee house with a, coffee makers and things, like as if it was from Macy's, housewares or something with the coffee. And we got rid of some of that stuff, brought in a piano, brought in a PA system, started with a Friday night music, and then added Friday and Saturday, and then Sunday open mic, and then on. And a lot of amazing industry people started coming in there. I bought it at the end of 1990, and met so many musicians. And music, again, was always my life, and I was always singing and doing some one-woman shows. And that's when I was working with, Ellen Guerin, got in with, with Joanne, and just starting to really work my craft, but as a performer. And I used to write more musical theater style, but I always wanted to sort of move into the rock kind of scene. But the coffee house was more of that folk, like you said, that folk scene, or the folk rock scene, or
that's
acoustic
what it was
rock.
in Greenwich Village. All the
Yeah,
coffee
it was
houses,
all that. So that's what I wanted.
Dylan and all them guys, they
Exactly.
all started in the
Exactly.
coffee houses in the village.
So there were just, amazing artists that were coming into Coffee Junction, and I also play the violin, so I got to play with a lot of people, and so as time went by, someone very special walked in the door there, and that was at the beginning of 2001. You want to wait on that? You want to hold on that story?
Well, I want to get that in the next.
All right, that's just.
But I want to get back to that violin that I saw you playing.
Okay.
That's I looked at it. It was shaped really funny.
That violin is called a Viper, and it was built by a man by the name of Mark Wood, who's based in New York, and he decided to create this instrument. And I'm not sure the entire reason for it, but there's one thing about playing the violin: you got to hold it like this, and you're like that. I have a little scoliosis since I started violin at 8 years old.
Really?
Yeah, and so. This particular violin, they have it can be a 4-string like a regular violin, or 5 strings, or 6 strings, or the big Mama Jamma, which is the one I have, the Viper, is a 7-string. And this instrument it has like a little chest plate thing that goes under your arm, and it touches your chest, and it can strap onto your body so that you don't have to hold it. It's like you have an appendage. You got to watch where you're walking.
Really?
You kill somebody. But it's wonderful because you don't have to do that. And this guy Mark Wood has orchestras of kids that are electrifying their strings and able to be free without holding the violin like this with anymore. You can let go of it and it's on you. So, and it's wonderful. And I love the 7-string because I love low notes, and it takes you from a violin into the viola, into the cello, and down into the top of the bass. So you can play some bass on that thing as well, you know, really. So you can do it.
Yeah, because I saw it and it's not. Now we're gonna end here and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about you and David Carradine and how you guys met and this and that and see what it's all about. So come back for part 2 in 1 minute, all right?